You're saying, just picking up then when you're talking about with the cultures, the different cultures, and yes, particularly
Yeah,
and Pacific, all of those community culture places, about that, the challenges of approaching managers. I mean, that's one of the benefits that with this program is working with coaches like yourself or with me, is that's the great benefit of this is you have coaches with years of experience like yourself within different industries, and myself on my side of the country over here with
yeah,
different experience, and we've got experience that we can help coach others to use different approaches, and we get to know people within our coaching practices on a personal level. That helps. Do you agree?
absolutely. I mean, when you coach somebody professionally, it's always great to have data and information. Something that you can work with, something which is going to really, you can look at this data and go, this is clearly the pathway to my development. And the great thing about the Leadership Challenge is that everyone who does the program does the LPI 360,
Yeah.
the Leadership Practice Inventory, the 360. So whether that's an individual who comes for coaching or whether it's somebody who does the program, everyone does the LPI. And the LPI is giving you not only data on how frequently you do this behavior or not, but it's also giving you very rich information from your colleagues about what needs to change, what needs to improve, what you need to continue doing, all those different aspects. So the LPI 360 for me is the heart and the power of the Leadership Challenge program.
Yeah.
And everyone who does the program gets that opportunity to get feedback. And then you can take that feedback, either use it personally, work with your coach on it, whatever. It's very flexible.
Yeah, it is. I do find that. And it's not all about looking for the things that we're not doing 100% right. It's also about, hey, you're doing this really well, so how can we build that up and cross that over to those other behaviors, which this is what I find, particularly with the LPI, is the linkages between the practices and how we can blend them together and see the whole picture, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that for me, Kouzes and Posner have worked on the materials over the years. They have updated the questions. But really, fundamentally, I mean, if you think about it, when they started doing this work, there was no internet, right? There was nothing technology like that. We didn't have computers really even properly, except in universities. So we didn't have that technology. And yet, it seems to me that the great thing about the Leadership Challenge is that these behaviors continue to be relevant, right? They still continue to be relevant. And, you can work on them, you can develop them. And you're right, it's always good to start from a place of strength. All the psychological research says, don't look at just negatives, but look at what strengths you have to build on those. You're absolutely right, Kelly.
Yeah.
But what about you? What was when you went to Sonoma and you did the Leadership Challenge first? What was the kind of aha for you?
For me, it just made sense. It really made sense, and it resonated. And it wasn't a case of one moment going, oh, this fits. It was just every practice that we reviewed, I went, oh my goodness, that's why I worked really well when I was working with this leader or this manager. I can see those behaviors in them. And like you said, with your experience as well, but it definitely was. It was analyzing myself through the LPI and going, oh, I haven't been doing that behavior very much. I can see that impact that has on the people. So if I go back to a leadership role where I was getting frustrated because people around me weren't performing the way that I expected them to, and I didn't understand why, because everybody was getting the same support, I could see that, if I had have increased this behavior, that behavior, or, or more of this or less of this, there could have been a different impact. So that was kind of it. It all just sort of fits into making sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. And so, now, I find I deliver the programs, of course, but I also use the LPI for coaching. Because people need to get an insight, from around. If you think of Daniel Goleman, he's a famous psychologist in Harvard University. He wrote Emotional Intelligence and Social Intelligence, I mean, if you look online, you can see videos from him talking about, well, you know, how do you get insight from, you know, how do you get data to work with when you want to make change? And he goes, you need a 360. You know, the 360 is what you need to get. You want to get some kind of feedback from your colleagues that is anonymous. That's the key to all change. And for me, what's interesting, because a lot of the work I do is kind of integrated and but also separate. When I think about delivering coach training workshops, for instance, we talk loads about emotional and social intelligence. And the behaviors that you would read about in Daniel Goleman's books, for instance, are the same kind of behaviors that Kouzes and Posner are talking about. You know? And so knowing who you are, modeling the way, knowing who you are as a leader, what's important to you, what your values are, you know, how you inspire people to follow you willingly in whatever direction you're going, challenging processes, which is not just about the process, but also how other people do things, how other organizations do it, looking outside as well as inside. And then just how we enable. For me, one of the most powerful of the 5 behaviors, or the 5 practices, is enabling others to act. You know, how do we interact with each other? How do I really ensure that we have a very productive, engaging relationship if we work together? And that's, to me, where a lot of the emotional and social intelligence lies. And then the encouragement, which is another one, that encourages the heart, which is the 5th practice. So these 5 practices, to me, I mean, people, you know, get their LPI 360 and they find maybe down the bottom of the 30, there's ones they need to focus on. You can't do them all, right? Not possible, right? Do you find that as well?
Yes, it's impossible, and you know, it's unrealistic. And once we start setting those unrealistic expectations, we're set to fail. So that's not the goal, to be perfect at everything. So
exactly.
I've got a little motto at the moment, which I'm currently living by, and it's about being perfectly imperfect.
I like that one.
So which is what humans are. We're perfectly imperfect. We can't be perfect at absolutely everything all the time. Though I try, but it's, you know, not always successful. And I think that's a good thing to keep in mind with this, is there's 30 behaviors. 30 behaviors is a lot. You know, what we've got to be focusing on is being really good at, you know, a few of them, or not being good as such, but modeling them often, more frequently. And then that becomes habit. So then we can focus on others and they will flow on through.
Absolutely. And I think that the thing about when you work with something like the Leadership Challenge, doing workshops, coaching people, you know, you bring to people an insight that they don't normally get day to day. And so they can bring that insight into their changing behaviors for sure, but they also can start modeling that with their teams, you know, the people around us are passing on the benefit of this wonderful experience that they have, either coaching or doing the program itself. So, yeah, it's just, for me, it's quite powerful stuff, you know. People engage with it very easily. I mean, I had an experience here recently. I mean, you always wonder what it's going to be like to do the program in a new country. And so one of my clients asked me to do a couple of programs for their senior team and the level below. 90% of those were Khmer, Cambodian, you know, people who are in the organization. You know, it always fascinates me, how will this land in a country like Cambodia, for instance, with a young team of managers, all great managers, by the way, but how will this land? It's amazing. They just absolutely love it. And they you can see the aha moments, because one of the great things to me about the workshop is not just the delivery and the activities and so on, is those moments when people are starting to get this insight into what is good leadership and what's not good leadership, and maybe what they've done wrong, what they need to do instead. So, and that, for me, no matter where I've delivered this program, it's never any different. That people always get these amazing insights.